Hello everyone, welcome back and thanks for joining me today. Before we get started on today's video, I just want to take a second and send a big congratulations out to my fellow YouTube creator Rich and his partner John on their upcoming marriage. I am blissfully aware of how lucky I and they are to live in a place where same-sex marriages are not just tolerated, but celebrated. So a big congratulations to you both and wish you many years of happiness to come. So in today's video, we are going to be starting on the flooring for the dollhouse. Now for this house, I've decided that the majority of the floor is going to be hardwood. Of course, there'll be exceptions. The kitchens, the bathrooms will be either tile or a linoleum kind of look. But for the main parts of the house, we're going to do hardwood. And I know you've probably seen a gazillion videos on how to lay hardwood in miniature houses or dollhouses. So this is just my contribution to the list. My name is Penny, this is Penny's Small Spaces, and I hope you enjoy. Before we get to the flooring itself, I want to talk first about templates. So lots of creators will create a template of the room space, build their floor on top of that template, and then slide the floor into place. I think there are times when that method certainly has advantages. For example, if I'm laying out paper or tile or that prefabricated dollhouse linoleum, it's a great method for making sure that the fit is right. Also, if you have some goofy corners or angles or walls to get around, a template can certainly help. There are other times when a space is square and you're laying out, say, sticks for a hardwood floor effect, that you may not need to have a template. Having said all that, I'll show you my quick and easy process using copy paper and poster board. I started by laying my first piece of paper in the upper left-hand corner, and you want to make sure that you're getting it nice and snug into that corner so that it's touching both walls. There was a slight gap of about 1 inch on the right-hand side, so my second piece of paper went snug into the right-hand upper corner, and then I just laid some tape where the seam of that paper was to keep it in place. My third piece, which is the piece that I'm putting in here, has gone down to the bottom of where the floor line is going to be. And again, adding tape so that it stays in one place. What I'm left with at the end is one large piece of paper that fits that space perfectly. I added a few more pieces of tape just to keep everything in place, and then I taped that whole template down onto some poster board. And it was a simple process of cutting away the excess amount of poster board so that the poster board was exactly the same size as the paper template. What I'm left with then is one solid piece of poster board that fits the room perfectly. I use this method to create a template for my very oddly shaped kitchen that I'm going to tile. More on the kitchen floor later. Let's start by doing a hardwood floor. Now, with the exception of the kitchen and the bathrooms, all of the floors in this house are going to be hardwood. So what I've done is I've just taken a ruler here that I'm clamping to my table that's going to make sure that my rows stay nice and straight. I'm using coffee stir sticks to make the floor. And I have to say that I am always looking for the cheapest way to do a project. It's just who I am. But I found that when I was shopping for coffee stir sticks, the ones that I was finding in places like dollar stores or Dollar Tree were very often different widths and were also very often crooked or bent. And so I ended up buying some slightly higher quality coffee stir sticks from Amazon. They cost me way more than it would have had I stayed with the dollar store stuff. But at the end of the day, I think it was the best decision because they certainly were far more uniform and even than if I had used those other poorer quality. Not to say that these were all perfect, because they certainly weren't. There was still the odd one that was either bent or crooked, and so I just ended up tossing those out. I had to cut off the round ends from each of the sticks, and then I took some very fine grain sandpaper and it just kind of rubbed the edges around on the sandpaper just to get rid of any splinters caused by cutting them. It took some time to get them all done, but here's what I was left with at the end. I did a little test run on a spare piece of paper, and obviously I haven't cut off the ends so it's all round, but what I wanted to know was whether or not the method that I'm going to show you was going to work. And that is, instead of using glue, which means you have to weight everything down so nothing warps, I decided to use some two-sided tape. Now the tape that I'm going to be using is the Sukwang brand, which is a very high quality two-sided tape and is super sticky, and I find once you've got something stuck on it, it's stuck. You can buy this stuff on Amazon in a variety of different widths. This is the 5-inch roll, and I think there's something like 27 yards of tape on there, so it'll last you a good long time. I've also opted out of using the template that I created for this room. My reasoning is that I can apply these sticks to the template and then glue the template to the floor, or I can just glue the sticks directly to the floor. And it just felt like adding the template was adding another unnecessary step for me. One of the many perks of two-sided tape is that you can expose small areas at a time. I started by adding the first stick right up against the ruler and right up snug against the wall itself. The second stick was of course too long, so I needed to measure and cut off an appropriate amount to make it fit that space. Then for each row following, I wanted to make sure that the seams in between the two pieces of wood were staggered. So on my second row, I started with a much smaller piece of wood so that the seam would be farther to the left than the original. You can see here how I've staggered the seams in those pieces of wood, which gives it just a more authentic look. I'm going to carry on this process and go all the way to the back of the room. This process didn't take me near as long as I thought it was going to, but it's very rough, so it's going to need a really good sand. Once I finished sanding, I went over it with a piece of towel just to make sure that I got all of the sawdust up. The next step was to add some filler. So this is just basic drywall filler. This is the kind that goes on pink and dries white, so it's easy to tell once it's dry. The spackling dries pretty quickly, but it was later in the evening, and so I left it until the following day. Then I had to go back and re-sand it again to get back all of the wood grain that was covered by the spackling. I love how the sticks came in different colors. I think it adds some really nice realism to the floor. I added some painter's tape around all of the bottoms of the walls because I am going to stain the floor and I didn't want the stain to get up onto the walls. Now in my case, the walls are not yet glued down, so I could have just simply taken them off, but I also realized that for most people that's not the case and you don't have that option. So this is something that you can do if your walls are already permanently in place. I'm using Minwax to stain the floor. Now Minwax is the type of stain that you brush on and then wipe off. And the more layers you add, the darker your color becomes. The color that I'm using is called Provincial, and this is actually a very dark wood stain, which is the look that I'm going for. So I'm doing about 2 or 3 inches at a time, making sure that I've got a really good saturation into the wood, and then of course stopping to do the wiping as well. So I finished staining the floor and it's all dry now, and I have to say I'm so happy with how this turned out. I love the different colors that are in the floor, and I think it really looks authentic like a real hardwood floor would. You can also see where I got stain up above the tape, of course, but it did wipe off fairly easily, and what little residue is left should be covered by the paint. I have one more step to protect the floor, and so I'm going to add 2 coats of some Satin Mod Podge. That will do 2 things. It'll protect the finish on the floor, but it'll also protect the floor from any kind of paint spills that might happen while I continue in this room. Now, even though Mod Podge goes on this kind of milky color, it does dry clear, so I'm not worried about having any kind of residue on the floor. So I'm going to end this video here. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned because next time we're going to tile the kitchen floor. Until then, take care. Bye for now.